Oh, I love to talk about an overcomplicator. By the way, this is me. This can be me all day long. Where sometimes we like to take the long way around the block instead of being much more clear, simple, and direct. What do overcomplicators get accused of? Well, I like to say meetings that tend to provide a lot of information or steps versus decisions. So when I'm working with an overcomplicator and they'll talk to me about an offsite or a meeting or something they're working on, I'll say, okay, what are the 2 or 3 results that you're trying to achieve? Because we can get very caught up in details in areas that are really not important to the result. So that's one aspect of being an overcomplicator. Um, you know you're dealing with an overcomplicator when you're getting questions like, well, so tell me what you're asking for. Tell me what you're looking for us to decide. People are trying to sort through what feels complicated or unclear. I know I'm working with a team that's feeling like they have an uncomplicator manager because the team will say to me, like, I don't understand what he wanted after the meeting. Or the team will say, wait, so is she asking for this or is she asking for that? Being an overcomplicator, for us, it makes all kinds of sense. Like, why are you guys confused by this? But this is another just classic case of we've got to understand our audience and hear it how they're hearing it. Here's also a style that in particular can be very hard to see in ourselves. I'll give you a very different example, but I work with a lot of leaders who are interested in joining boards. So I do a lot of work around board readiness, meaning landing a board seat. When I work with them, even on simple things like let's develop a board bio, lots of overcomplicating, lots of giving, information that may not feel relevant versus let's really cut to the kinds of results you're able to produce and how you would produce those for a board and what kind of boards would be really wanting those types of results. That's a different, more straightforward conversation when it comes to landing that seat. So I say this for 2 reasons. One, overcomplicators often need a partner to help them sort through that. It can be tough to see this in ourselves. The other thing to keep in mind, going back to what we said earlier, is that if you're getting a lot of these types of let's make this less complicated questions, that's a good sign. You got to simplify, clarify. One more thing that I have found some overcomplicators do, which is actually not produce a lot of results. There's a lot of action, but when we take a step back and say, tell me what progress you've made, tell me the results you've produced, that can be a harder question for them to answer. So for those of you in functional roles, think about that. If you're in a functional role, you've got to be able to demonstrate those kinds of very quantitative, not just qualitative, quantitative results, impact, progress. And that takes some time to think through sometimes. It's not always as obvious to us what those can be, but we can do that. Similarly, overcomplicators tend to spend a lot of time, I'll call it like almost like project managing, steering committee types of behaviors. Here's where we are, everybody. Here's the reporting to support that. Here's the dashboard. Look, there's nothing wrong with that, but I call it its activity, important though it may be, without outcomes. So the other very critical thing with an overcomplicator is they've got to shift that orientation in a hard way to results. Orient to results versus things that feel productive and important, but actually they just kind of create some overcomplication.